It is Neil Atkinson with Josh Sexton. It is Talking Reds. It is Thursday. It is Thursday. Marvellous news. It's been a funny week because of Easter. Not quite sure yet. It takes a bit of time to, the funny thing about Easter is all the way through Friday, you think it's Saturday. All the way through Saturday, you think it might be Sunday, but it could also now be Friday again. All the way through Sunday, you think, my God, is it Saturday? And then on Monday, you're convinced it's Sunday. It is Thursday, and this is Talking Reds. It's Neil Atkinson with Josh Sexton, and say what you want, the Anfield Wrap knows what day it is. We also know there was Premier League football last night. That was Wednesday. Everton found themselves up against Leicester. They got themselves a late equaliser to ensure they go into the Merseyside Derby, the 14,733rd Merseyside Derby, in very, very high spirits. The Merseyside Derby is the only football match that gets a number attached to it every single time it is played. Nobody ever says this is the fourth time Norwich City played West Bromwich Albion or anything to that effect. I've got Josh Sexton. I've made that crystal clear. The other thing that happens last night is that Manchester City 0-0 at half-time get themselves a 3-0 victory against Brighton. The point about this, Josh, is we need Manchester City to drop points once. I don't think there's anyone in a Liverpool sort of environment who thinks that Liverpool haven't got to win every game and hope for one favour. One of the possible favours is gone. That's absolutely fine. There's more opportunities to come.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think we were always just living out of hope rather than expectation, weren't we? I think last night we almost had the Adam Lallana factor attached to Brighton, and that Brighton are quite a likeable team in general. Graham Potter, as the manager, seems like a likeable character, a good coach as well, and there's some good sort of young talent and a good footballing setup at Brighton there. So I think in that sense you almost are more like willing them to win, because that would be a nicer way for Liverpool to catch a break on City. But it wasn't to be. I watched the first half and then didn't watch the second half, so I can't help but feel partially to blame for Brighton's
I think you are
collapse.
responsible. Yeah. They needed your moral support,
exactly.
And then when they turned to luck, you were nowhere to be seen.
Yeah, I was the rock that was sort of keeping everything together for Brighton in that first half, and obviously once I'd departed, they fell apart. So I just have to apologise to the lads really, and to Liverpool and Brighton fans across the globe.
It's really, really fair. Josh Sexton yet again letting Seagulls down en masse. It's something for us all to reflect on, something to build on from this point, though. Maybe if he watches all of the next City match, which is at home to Watford, where it is best to have quite literally no expectations. Manchester City against Watford on Saturday, prior to them facing Real Madrid next week in the Champions League. It should be a pressure fixture. It almost certainly won't be. Everton then, our blue brethren, they're coming to Anfield on Sunday. Warm welcome can be expected for them. In dreadful form away from home. They've only won one away game all the way through the campaign. But they will feel as though it was a point gained in the end last night. They actually have some decent opportunities against Leicester. They've showed resilience there. They showed resilience against United. They showed resilience against Newcastle. The thing about all three of these games is they were all at Goodison Park. Still, they shouldn't be taken for granted, this game on Sunday, because it is a Merseyside derby.
Absolutely, yeah, and they've started to show some spirit sort of at the perfect time for them in that sense. Frank Lampard has managed to get them a couple of results here and there. As you say, they are at Goodison Park, so there's the factor of the Everton fans being there, but then you've heard Everton players coming out in the past and saying that's just as much been a hindrance when things are going wrong as it has been a help at times. And I think there's an extent to which the fans are starting to sort of feel some, familiarity with these players now. You saw the scenes after they won. What was the game they won the other week, where they were all celebrating on the pitch after Newcastle, yeah. Where you sort of saw the scenes at the end there, how much the fans and the players seem to have sort of got on the same page now, and that doesn't necessarily bode well for Liverpool. But then you look at how good this Liverpool side are at the moment, and it feels like there's a big gulf between what Everton are doing at Goodison Park with those results and what this Liverpool side are doing. Tonight,
Burnley entertain Southampton at home, and then they've got Wolves on Sunday. Wolves have got the fifth best away record in the league, just as a note there. Marco Polo L says it feels Marco, if we're going to do this, mate, you're going to have to make it easier for me. 41 in a minute. We're going to come on to that when we talk about the Premier League Hall of Fame.
Polol's a good name.
Polol, do you think Polol?
Yeah, I think so.
Well, Polol.
It's a good internet name, isn't it?
Marco Polol says it feels like Leeds and West Ham are the only likely spots City can slip up. Already the home games are too easy, and Wolves are at the beach already. And that's a little bit harsh on Wolves. They've been, I think, a bit more in and out than people think all the way through the season. But also I think that when City go to Molineux, and they've still got to come to us, I hasten to add, Burnley have got Wolves at the weekend. But when City have got to go to Molineux, I think Molineux will want there to be a result. But in the same way, I think Turf Moor will want a result tonight against Southampton. The point about this, I think, is that atmospheres massively drive football games at this stage of the season. We can talk about players being on the beach or not on the beach, but if your crowd is absolutely on it, and they're demanding something a little bit different, then you never know. And I think that Burnley will get something tonight from Southampton.
100%, and you've seen the way that Wolves have impacted title races between us and Manchester City in the past. You know, you only have to look into sort of recent times under Nuno Espirito Santo to see that Wolves have been able to take points off Manchester City, and you can argue that under Bruno Lage they've taken another sort of step up from there as well. They've not got, you know, necessarily a proper goal scorer since Raul Jimenez's injury. It doesn't seem to sort of bring the goal return now that he's brought in previous seasons, but they've got a few lads there who can make things happen in games, and that's you know, could be enough on the day. This is what I'm saying in terms of you living in hope rather than expectation. There's no team there, you know, you mentioned West Ham and Leeds, you don't expect them to beat Manchester City. There's just the hope that maybe they can
and they don't need
get
to beat
something.
them.
Well, exactly, yeah. There's just the hope they can get a draw, hope they can take points off them, hope they can sort of gain that scalp, if you will. And you know, same goes for Burnley tonight. Is it Southampton Burnley have got tonight? Yeah. Southampton are a very, very strange football team.
They are indeed.
Honestly, someone should do a study into Southampton under Ralph Hasenhüttl, because they seem to have like one absolute drubbing in them every season. One where they just get like snotted for like 6 or 7 or even 9. I think was the worst, wasn't it? But then they play some quite good football at times. They've taken points off Manchester City this season as well. So a very strange football team. I'm excited to see Burnley with a new manager bounce. That's like that's a strange thing of
it's a unique proposition.
It is, exactly. It's a weird thing for a Burnley side and Turf Moor to sort of have in their armoury is a new manager bounce, because we've seen Sean Dyche there for so long now. So I'm excited to see if that can sort of propel them onto something new.
Yeah, indeed. They should as well. Burnley be singing that. Sorry, Mick Jackson, you are for real. That should be the Burnley song. I don't know if they're going to get there at Turf Moor. Let's give them a chance and see if they can pull that one out the bag. Got some t-shirts. This one's Alisson Becker's. That one's Mohamed Salah's.
Disgusting on the back, this one as well.
He very rarely... Oh, that's Boss. I've not seen the back. The Egyptian King. Quite good lettering. Excellent stuff. The Egyptian King in question often doesn't play the home Merseyside Derby. The way he was acting on Tuesday about Sunday with Thiago, I've long thought that Klopp could ring the changes for this one, absolutely ring the changes. I now feel as though that might not happen, that he may well just be going with 2 or 3 changes possibly, but going with what we can sort of generally call the lads for the next few games. Maybe make changes for Newcastle away with a few numbers, not because I think Newcastle will be easy away. They won last night and they're on a really good run at home. More that he may well have sort of gone, right, for a period of time, these are the 14, 15, 16 we're running with. We'll get the other side of the Villarreal home game, maybe reassess from there. What do you think he'll do on Sunday? Because as I say, I thought it could be a crazy team, it could be 7 changes, it could be this, that or the other. Now I think it won't be.
He's more than inclined to throw a Mickey is the one thing I'll say. He
loves doing it. The home
particularly
derby.
In the home Merseyside derby. I'll never forget sort of our journey to the ground a few years back when in the game where he played like Adam Lallana and Divock Origi and Shaqiri and sort of put that completely mad team out. And honestly, everyone's arse fell out. Like everyone was completely convinced that Liverpool were going to lose this Merseyside derby and Liverpool win that Merseyside derby 5-2. He really does. I like the idea though that he's not just throwing a Mickey for us, he's throwing it for the players. Like all week in training, the players like, who do you reckon he's going to pick on Sunday? Like honestly, nobody has any idea until the team sheet comes out an hour before the game and Mo Salah realises he's not even in the squad, and you explain that one to him from there. I think it's going to be a dead interesting one. Like he's got the potential there and he's given himself moves to make a couple of changes. Like I for example wouldn't be surprised to see Virgil van Dijk drop out for this one and him go for Konate and Matip together at centre half, and then bring Van Dijk back in the week, possibly partnering Konate, given that Matip partnered him the other night. But then that's the sort of rhythmic changes that Jurgen Klopp doesn't tend to make to his Liverpool team. So I honestly think that all options are open. I think Naby Keita should start. I think Naby Keita's recent form suggests that he should be starting in this Merseyside derby, and that should be, you know, a way we proceed.
Absolutely. Craig Hannon just came in just to break the fourth wall. Craig, come back in, Craig. Craig, pass the piece of paper. Come on. This is Talking Reds, hosted by me.
I want Craig to hold it up in front of the camera.
So this is the way it works. It's hosted by me, Talking Reds. So Craig should come in with this piece of paper here. It reads thus. It's an envelope, in fact. I think that's a waste of a good envelope. London live show. I think what Craig wants me to mention is that we'll be in Hackney Earth in London on the 9th of July, doing our live show. I think we'll probably do doors about 6:30 or 7. I'm making this up as I go along. We'll go on stage at about 7:45. We'll probably come off stage at about 10:30. maybe even closer to 11, because like Bruce Springsteen, we are the hardest working men and women in show business, and we love to do a big show, and it's a big venue. The stage is enormous. Honestly, the canvas is glorious. It's a really cool venue where we are, the Theatre in Earth in Hackney. Can't wait to do it. First time back in London in ages. You can get tickets right now from, if you check out all of our socials, you'll be able to see them there. Have we got the link working for us yet? So it'll be in the comments here, but it is also at theanfieldwrap.com/TAW live is the link that there will be able, in order to get yourself to the London live show. This artwork, by the way, doesn't fucking come cheap. Quality work.
I think Craig should have put it in the envelope. He's wasted an
opportunity.
Hand you the envelope.
And then I could have got it out from the envelope. Oh God, it would have been glorious.
Note to self, Craig.
Next time we'll do that one, and it will be the absolute business. So yeah, can't wait for it. Earth is about the sort of size of venue I'd like to play. Ultimately, we're going to try and stream it to all 6.5 billion people who live on the planet, whether they like it or not. Some fellas sat around in Papua New Guinea, suddenly getting the Anfield Wrap live, beamed through all of their devices.
Their broadcast.
Yeah.
So some kid somewhere is watching SpongeBob, and then all of a sudden you're on their screen.
I'm absolutely delighted that I would love to disrupt SpongeBob, though I reckon he'd have some revenge in the post for me. You don't mess around with the SpongeBob
when you least expect it.
No.
A little SpongeBob laugh in the free show.
Yeah, it would be absolutely atrocious to be eventually get the revenge of SpongeBob.
I have to set that link up, by the way. The link that you've just told them, I have to go away and set that up after this. So
theanfieldwrap.com/TAW live.
Craig gave me the most knowing nod ever then when you said that.
Really marvellous stuff. Excellent. It's going to be there for you. Just give us a bit of a chance live, Talking Reds live. You can't do it right now.
Not right now. Don't go to it right now.
Hasn't got a computer in front of him. We'll work on that for next time as well. Listen, where are we? What else are we saying? What else are we doing? I think that my chat stopped working, by the way, so it was apologies if I'm not referring to something that's in the chat. So, the other title of the show is Premier League Hall of Fame. Premier League Hall of Fame. Ultimately, today it's been announced what's happening with the Premier League Hall of Fame with the new inductees. It is the second year the Premier League Hall of Fame is operating, and I find literally saying the words Premier League Hall of Fame to be utterly, endlessly ridiculous. I'm trying the best way to sort of address this. I think that there is something in it. Ultimately, for me, the way in which football culture works is football clubs, and the cultural unit of measurement that matters within football clubs is football supporters. They themselves curate what does or doesn't matter historically. So, for instance, we've got the Blue Brethren coming on Sunday, and you're about to hear more about Joe Parkinson than you ever thought you would. So, Joe Parkinson played centre mid for Everton in the mid-90s, and he was one of the famed dogs of war, but he was a really good player, Joe Parkinson. So, John Ebrell wasn't as good a player for me as Joe Parkinson was. Won his battles, all that sort of stuff. And Blues still talk about Joe Parkinson, about John Ebrell, about Barry Horn, about a lot of these footballers, not because they were the best players ever to play for Everton. They were not the Golden Vision, Alec Young. They were not Howard Kendall. They were not Colin Harvey. But they got Everton through a really, really sticky patch. When the Blues were struggling early this season, there was a lot of chat of what we could really do with now is a player like this. That's the one part of this. There's another part of this, which is also, then you've got footballers who'll never end up in a Premier League Hall of Fame. And this is before we get to the idea of the delineation in 1992. But footballers will never end up in a Premier League Hall of Fame who are actually really, really good players. I'll give you a very good example. Someone like Niall Quinn was an excellent footballer, brought Kevin Phillips into play, who himself scored a lot of goals in the Premier League. You can go down this list, in loads of weird ways. Leicester City's title-winning season, Okazaki was unbelievably important for them. He'll never end up in something like this either. But within Leicester, they'll know what he did. Niall Quinn, Sunderland knew what he did. You think about players even like Janino at Middlesbrough, they'll remember what that moment felt like. My big issue with this is that this is a corporate organisation completely separate, effectively, and I don't give a fuck if it's voted for or not, by the way, I hasten to add, completely separate to football supporters on the ground who are doing the business of supporting football, deciding, no, these are the important players. Now I want to contextualise this a little bit further as well. Ian Wright can have the keys to my house. I want to be crystal clear about this. He can kip in ours whenever he wants. We're having the bathrooms done at the minute, Ian, so there's a lot of disruption, so I probably wouldn't do the next few weeks. But once the bathrooms are boxed off, Ian, any time you want to come, you can come to ours. He is a genuinely great man. He was a brilliant footballer. And this is not a conversation about whether or not any player who's been selected today. But I will give another example where Manchester United supporters, a lot of them are not that fond of Peter Schmeichel, because Peter Schmeichel goes on to play not just for Aston Villa but for Manchester City, and then he says some stuff after he's left Manchester United that they don't like. They get to curate this, and I think that genuinely, Josh, and this is my question, you are someone who likes the American sport, and I'm not going to do all the usual jokes that I do on this one. I think that this is a uniquely American way to look at the way in which you curate histories, because the way in which the franchises work in the American sport model is that they do not have the cultural unit that matters in the first place, which is the supporter, and the histories are handed down from the top to below, and it is obnoxious and it should not be happening here.
Absolutely, yeah, and there's an extent to which as well that the American model is set up for the players and the athletes who are involved to be sort of the centre and the heart of everything. So when an athlete in, the NBA, for example, the basketball is my sport. I'm not sort of familiar with Hall of Fames in the NHL or the NFL, but the sort of story that they take from, whether they come out of high school and go into the NBA, whether they come out of college and go into the NBA, and then finish their careers as NBA Hall of Famers. That's a good story for most of those lads. But as you say, there's not the generic like support element there that football has. It's not as sort of steeped in tradition to an extent as football is, because you've got franchises and franchises can move all over the place. So for example, the franchise I support is now based in LA. It's previously been based in San Diego and in Buffalo, New York, which is wild within itself. So
San Diego and LA is at least close.
Exactly, and Buffalo, New York is nowhere near LA if you're unfamiliar with America. So there's not that same sort of tradition that like binds people to a place or to a group of people or any of those kinds of things. And that's where I think that the Premier League will have problems with the Premier League Hall of Fame. But then, as you say, you do still get those stories about those players. So Ian Wright's put a tweet out today saying how proud it makes him, given his story, given all that sort of happened to him throughout his life, and given his journey to becoming a professional footballer, and how he never thought he'd become a professional footballer. That's a bit of a payoff for him to have gone through that journey, to have gone through all those trials and tribulations. So in that sense, I can get on board with the Premier League Hall of Fame, but then I also take your point.
But the Premier League, the Ian Wright moment that matters, that I literally remember as a Liverpool supporter, is when he breaks, I think, Cliff Baston's record for a number of Arsenal goals, and he has a shirt on his back with 179 on, because he broke that moment as an Arsenal. At that moment, he's an indisputable lifetime Arsenal great. He's not a Premier League great. He comes through at Crystal Palace in 1990, but also the idea of a Premier League great is, to me, it's completely separate to the purpose. Sergio Aguero, firstly, has only played for one Premier League team. He's a Manchester City great. He's not a Premier League great. The notion of the Premier League is literally just the division that the footballers all play in, and that's the problem here for me, first and foremost. As I say, none of this is to remove the wondrous achievements of the footballers, or even to throw judgment at their characters. Although I will make the point again that, for instance, the way in which some Liverpool supporters feel about some ex-players does change over the course of a period of time. It's not as cut and dried as you just are one and that's the end of the matter. But that's also what this does as well, is it decides that it's going to define these people in aspect. And I do feel very like an old man shouting at clouds here. And I am very rarely, I'd like to think you agree, but separate to the jokes about the fact that I can't make anything work and don't know how to do more than one monitor at once, two tellies, as we say in the office. Always very impressed when people have got two tellies. Ash has there as he's producing this. There is this thing where I think, ultimately, on the whole, I'm really quite anti-tradition. But the point about this is that let the people decide what their own are. And that's what drives me mad on this shit. And it genuinely does, and it's really weird, as I say, I do feel like an old man shouting at clouds, because, my God, there's bigger things in the world to worry about than the notion of a Premier League Hall of Fame. But I genuinely do end up at the point where I really just want these people, and anyone, honestly, even if it's you, even if you're a paying customer to the Anfield Wrap, thank you very much, anyone who partakes in it and takes it seriously, I want them to go fuck themselves, because this is not where we are meant to have been, or where we end up. It's not what the enterprise is about. It is about us getting to enjoy this in our terms, in our ways, all the way through. And that's the very premise of the Anfield Wrap, is that we tell the story of supporting Liverpool from the heart of the city. This stuff, none of it is about the heart of any city. It's the heart of some sort of corporate concept as to what the Premier League should be.
Absolutely, and I take your point about the divisions basically being vessels for the football teams to play in, and that's again another difference between British sports or sports in terms of football on a sort of wider scale and the American sports, is that the leagues aren't necessarily as important. It's more just a sort of mark of achievement of how good your football team is if you're in the Premier League compared to if you're in the Championship or League One, etc., etc. The only thing I would say to argue on the flip side of what you're saying is that this this whole thing is meant to be enjoyed. Like another one of the things we say at the Anfield Wrap is that this is a leisure activity, like sport. Sport in itself is a leisure activity. It's meant to be followed, it's meant to be celebrated, it's meant to be enjoyed. And the Premier League Hall of Fame is just another reason to enjoy the footballers. If your favourite footballer gets inducted to the Premier League Hall of Fame and they're made up about that, that's something to celebrate in my eyes.
You're much nicer than I am. I'd like them to say no thanks. Like with the honour system. Like with the honour system, they should just say no, it's not for me this, because it doesn't come from the people. It comes from the corporate gods instead. On Sunday, there is an opportunity for an Everton player to get themselves into a collective Everton Hall of Fame. Any Everton player who turned up and scored the winner, and I don't care who it is, whether it's this new lad at left back for the Mikolenko, whether it's Seamus Coleman, whether or not it is, for instance, Alan at the heart of the midfield, any Everton player who turns up at Anfield and scores a goal will get themselves into a Hall of Fame that matters so much more than anything that can be bestowed upon them by the Premier League, because it will mean that the Evertonians will hold them close to their hearts forever. The Blue Brethren are at Anfield on Thursday. It is the biggest game in world football that day. It does not get bigger than this. Download the Anfield Wrap app to enjoy it, to look forward to it, to savour it. I don't think an Everton player is going to get even near to our goal. That's not to be in any way, shape or form conceited or arrogant. It is that Liverpool at the moment are that good, and they will be working themselves to the absolute bone to ensure that their goodness prevails and that they win the day. But best of luck to the Blues. Let them try, let them do their very best, let them squeak and strain every single sinew, because the only thing that matters is what happens on the pitch. That's talking Reds.